Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Monday was Orange Shirt Day, a day that we're supposed to think about truth and reconciliation. And Beth Sturdevant, who has joined us tonight, posted a very impactful quote from a friend of hers, and she's also had quite a significant amount of exposure to Indigenous communities through her healing and some of the events that she puts on. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to start out, if I could, by reading the quote that she posted from a friend of hers. Orange Shirt Day. What does it mean to me? Truth and reconciliation. I hope so. I love the concept and I love the action of it more. For me, it means grandmother who was taken to residential schools in Spanish Ontario along with her sisters. It is everything they endured and went through. It's how it changed them from being there and how it changed their families who lost them. It's not just about what the children endured while there, it's also what their families went through, their mothers and fathers who had their children abducted and taken away without any consent. If you were a mother or a father, how would you feel in that situation? What would it do to you? It's about my mother and father who attended Indian day school and to what they and their families, classmates, endured there as well. It's what it did to me before I was even born. It is the normalized effect of intergenerational trauma that has played out in my own life. It is the continuation and in many ways the deepening of intergenerational trauma and the normalization of how Indigenous peoples are viewed in this country, this world. In many ways, at Algonquins of Pewakanagan First Nation, we are still finding our way with culture, language, ceremony, and healing. We have inherited a past that is traumatized, and we struggle to deal with and heal a legacy that was intentionally targeted to break us. For me, Orange Shirt Day means adequately funded programs by both federal and provincial governments to support this all-encompassing work. It means clean drinking water, healthcare that is culturally appropriate, non-racist or biased. It means that my Indigenous presenting female family, friends, and all my relations are not targeted to become murdered and missing Indigenous women, and that I don't have to worry about that. It means having the things that most people in this country take for granted as available to all Indigenous peoples as equals. It is safe communities, healthy children, and families. It is the future we will build, and we'd like your help. All my relations means everyone to me. It is the circle with no beginning and no end. It is inclusive as we all have something to contribute. One love. Miigwech. Pete. That was very powerful when I read it. And I read it again, Beth. Why did you post it?
Well, I posted it. It's my friend and teacher, Pete Bernard. He operates through the Eighth Fire, which is a school of essentially teaching healing, energy healing, spiritual healing. And he's from Pikwakanagan First Nations in Golden Lake. And for me, the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, I mean, as a white woman, I can't speak to the experiences of the atrocities from a personal perspective. And so whenever I hear my friends or other people who have experienced it, whether personally or intergenerationally, I'll backtrack a little bit. The way that we can support essentially the Indigenous cultures, the Indigenous peoples, especially during these special and very sacred days like the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, is to hold space and to allow them to share their stories and to speak their truth without judgment, without trying to silence them or to speak on behalf of them. So his words are always extremely powerful, not just because he is a healer and a medicine man, but from his own experience. And so what better way to really describe what's important, what matters about this September 30th day, the Orange Shirt Day, than from the words of somebody who has experienced it through his family and his community.
I found what you posted and what he wrote extremely powerful. And the fact that it had impacted several generations, his grandmother, his parents, himself. And I think that that is important for us to understand. And the way that he talks about the circle, everyone, I thought was impactful. I also think that you are a special individual, a unique individual, in that you've probably had more exposure to our Indigenous communities than most non-Indigenous people. You've studied healing. You've studied with Algonquin medicine people. You've worked with Indigenous healers. Tell us a little bit about your exposure to that culture and that community, if you could.
Sure. I'll first talk about what I haven't done. So while I've trained for 10 years with Pete, who is an Algonquin medicine man, nothing that he teaches and nothing that I've learned is cultural based. So it's all spiritual healing, energy medicine work that's essentially been passed on from his grandfathers and down his lineage, but again, not in a cultural way. So while a lot of my friends are Indigenous, I wouldn't say per se that I have more exposure or I can't really speak on behalf of anybody.
No, I'm not suggesting you can speak on behalf of them, but you certainly know their culture a lot more than I do. You've experienced it a lot more. You do healing sessions. You've trained with them. You
Yeah,
have a
but
better
not in
sense. And I think that one of the things that regrettably many of us don't do is expose ourselves. I went to a experience center in Edmonton, an Indigenous experience center, and spent 3 hours there, and it was extremely impactful. But you've spent that multiple times, correct?
yes, but not culturally. It's more from a perspective of being a guest, I guess is the best way I can describe it, is being blessed and having the honor of being invited into sacred ceremonies like a sweat lodge, or being taught certain teachings and being learning certain things from various Indigenous people. It is a way for me personally to help enhance who I am and to not use in my practice, so to speak, because I would never do Indigenous quote unquote healing. But if it can help me as a person grow and also bridge, right? Bridge perceived differences in our cultures, bridge perceived differences as humans. I mean, we're all living the human experience. If we take away any type of names or cultures or things like that, we can get to the heart of humanity. We all want the same basic things. It's just we're at various different levels of healing along that path. And so right now, from my understanding and from observing what's happening, especially in North America, in Turtle Island and in Canada, is the fact that now is the time when they're allowed to basically be proud of who they are for the first time in hundreds and hundreds of years, right? To essentially reclaim themselves as Indians, so to speak, when that was stripped away and taken and stolen from them and abused out of them. And they were not allowed to practice a lot of their culture. And so now that now they have the safe space to do so. And where it becomes tricky, especially I think what you're getting to, if I may, so many people, it's such a beautiful culture, right? Any type of Indigenous cultures that are land-based healings, land-based teachings, is such a beautiful process, I guess, of reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with ourselves. And as people coming from, I don't know where your family's from, but my family's from Europe, but many generations back. So I'm super disconnected from that lineage, right? I have basically no connection to any type of spirituality in that sense, no connection to greater purpose or cultural ceremonies and things like that. So we're basically like a country of mutts, so to speak. And it is so important to have that deeper community, that connective ceremonies that we can share with other people like us, so to speak. And I find that because we're so disconnected from nature, we're disconnected from culture, we're disconnected from ceremony, we often try and latch on to other people's because we're hungry for it. And so what's happening from my perspective and my experience is that often a lot of non-Indigenous people are trying to adopt Indigenous ways or practices because they are so powerful and they are so beautiful. And we are so hungry for that type of land-based healing, so to speak, and community and culture. So it just gets a little tricky in that we have to hold space for them as they are grieving the hundreds of years of, you know, destruction and, you know, cultural genocide and all of these things that have happened to them. So allowing, and with that, it's going to come anger. It's going to come, you know, grief. It's going to come all these natural processes in these stages of grieving, so to speak, and healing. So for me, it's an honor for me to be able to hold space as an ally, if you will, as somebody who deeply respects and values Indigenous cultures worldwide, to hold space and to be welcomed into certain ceremonies and things. But again, not as a way of taking, but a way of experiencing and coming together in full circle. Because really, if you think about truth and reconciliation, if we take it down to the singular version and use of that, my job as a healer is to help people reconcile within themselves. And with that means finding truth, right? Of, you know, why they're in pain, why they're suffering, you know, why they are at war, at odds with themselves. So we're all on a path of truth and reconciliation individually, and then you can extend that to our communities, culturally, and worldwide as well. So
Thank you for that, Beth. I really appreciate it. I think that for me, you know, you take experience beyond experience. I'll use the word celebrate it. You don't celebrate it in a celebration. You celebrate it as this is a culture with some parts of it in the healing process and the medicine man and things like that are spectacular, and you make use of them in your own healing processes, and you've participated with them to learn as much as you can about their ways. And when I've seen some of the things, and we'll talk after the break about some of the things that you do, I think you have celebrated our Indigenous people and our Indigenous culture and our Indigenous practices, and made them available to non-Indigenous people. And I think that's been beautiful and wonderful. And I've enjoyed my limited exposure to it. We got to take a break for some messages, and we're going to be back in just 2 minutes with Beth Sturdevant, who's a healer and a warrior, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what she's done and the training that she's done with our Indigenous people to get a sense of why she's someone that is worthwhile listening to on this issue. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes with Beth Sturdevant. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're chatting tonight with Beth Sturdevant. And as I mentioned, she's got an incredibly unique experience dealing with, experiencing, learning from, and then taking some of those experiences and learnings that she gained from our Indigenous people and putting them into practice in her own journey of being a spiritual healer. So let's, if we could, Beth, tell people a little bit about your experience. I've understood that you've trained with Algonquin medicine men and healers, and you've used some of those practices in what you do. Tell us a little bit about how you become aware of that, how you got involved, what the experiences were, and how you use it, if you could.
Absolutely. So I started on the path of healing. I call it the healer's journey because I needed it myself. And I got to a place in my own life where nothing traditional was working as far as traditional medicine, traditional therapies, things like that. And I'd been trying them, earnestly, like really, really delving into therapy and taking medication and things like that. And it's not to say that those practices do not work. They just didn't work for me. And so I got to a place in my own journey where I needed something more, but I was very skeptical because I didn't believe in anything, so to speak. And it was at that time where I started to become aware of a local Algonquin medicine man who offered courses. Again, they're not cultural based courses, they're healing courses. And so he was offering a course that combines essentially the work of working with God and angels, but also land-based practices and working with like shamanism, things, those kind of qualities and aspects of therapies.
Sorry, what do you mean by land-based?
Land-based, like animism, as working with spirits, like land spirits, like animal spirits, and things like that. So, kind of working with shamanic practices, which is a shaman, in short, is somebody who works in different realms and worlds of consciousness. And so if you think of the best way to imagine what a shaman is if you've ever read Lord of the Rings or seen the movies, Gandalf, would be the shaman in that he helps guide people on a journey to heal, essentially. And through that, you're going through the subconscious mind, which is the lower world, then the middle world, which is our current consciousness right here, and then the superconscious, which is the upper world. So a shaman works with, various spirits and plant-based spirits and land-based spirits, but also, we can work with other realms.
And so you went to this Algonquin medicine man.
Well, so this was a course I took that combined working with the medicines, working with angels, so Christian-based healing, so to speak, mixing it with shamanism, which I found very intriguing, but also, again, I was very skeptical. I had a very contentious relationship with God, so to speak. So this 2-year process of healing for myself, while I went in skeptical, was a wonderful test because it kept proving the medicine work was working, proving to me, because I'd go in thinking, oh, it's not going to work. I don't believe in this. And then it would continuously show me through experience that it did work. So over this 2 years, I really started to not only heal myself, but really truly believe in this energy medicine work and the spiritual healing. So then I continued down the path and I started taking more and more of the courses and studied for, about 8 years, and then started to assist in some of the teaching of the courses and things like that.
And now you've become a spiritual healer yourself, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And you specialize in females?
No.
I thought you did. And you have these warrior events.
Part of what I did, so part of my healer's journey was, at one point I worked with women and really focused on the warrior spirit, helping to empower people to want to essentially heal themselves, save themselves, right? Become their own warriors, their own heroes in life. So I would combine my practices in spiritual healing with physical practices of sword and shield training. So then you've got
sword and shield training.
Sword and shield training. I know it's a little out there, but because then you've got the kinetic, you're instantaneously accessing parts of the subconscious mind through the practice of. We did Viking sword and shield training because my lineage is Danish. And a lot of people really love, the Viking culture and can identify with it in some way. So I would combine the two, and that's where the women empowerment courses really came about and came to full fruition. Now I do lead women once a year in the summer. I do take women on a hiking trip in upstate New York. So that's pretty much all I do as far as the empowerment things at this time
And
for
I've been
women.
seeing that you've been doing things in a teepee or something. What's that all about?
No, I'll occasionally I'll rent a yurt.
A yurt? What's a yurt?
Yurt is like a circular tent, so to speak. They originate out of Mongolia, and they're just a way of bringing people together in circle, right? So circle, there's no beginning, there's no end. We're all equal. We sit together in circle. So I'll offer like you will do a circle in some kind of teaching or something that's going on that we need to work on. We'll talk about it, and then I'll lead everybody in a guided meditation at the end.
And tell me about a sweat lodge. My son's experienced a sweat lodge and found that incredibly impactful. Tell me about your experience with a sweat lodge.
Oh, I often say, I mean, it was such an honor, true honor to be invited. I did two sweat lodges, the last of which was in South Dakota with some Lakota warriors, and some of them were descendants of Sitting Bull, and I get teary-eyed thinking of it in the presence of these amazingly beautiful people and being welcomed into circle with that and with them. And it's a terrifying experience because it essentially, and again, I can only speak from my own experience. I do not know all the intricate details as to the teachings and the history behind it. But from my understanding, it's like going into the womb. It's complete and total darkness, and it's extreme heat, right? So you're really met face to face with a lot of fears. And for me, a lot of fear was coming up of being too hot and of being enclosed in this darkness, of not really knowing what to expect also. And in this environment with people I didn't really know, and also intimidated because I'm around these incredibly powerful people, and welcomed into this community as a white woman. And so, it really helps you and allows you this opportunity to really come face to face with this fear and the darkness that we often shy away from, and the things that we hide away in the darkness. So it was an amazing experience. And then I say, the closest I've ever felt to God was in that sweat lodge. Like
Really?
that me would be church. Because it really is this, you are like, you're in the womb, you're in ceremony, and you're just, it's really hard to describe, but that is the best way for me to really paint the picture of the depth of the sacredness. Is that's church, in my opinion.
How does it differ from a sauna?
Well, there's no, like a sauna where you just go in and you're sitting in the hot sauna.
Yeah.
Well, there's no sacredness in the sauna. There's no ceremony. There's no, in the sweat lodge, there's people who are tending the fire and the stones. And so there's like a process, and there's stages of it. And there's somebody leading the sweat, right? And sometimes there's singing and things like that. So there's ceremony in it. Whereas just like if you're going to church, there's ceremony in that too, right? There's somebody who's leading the sermon, you're singing, you're coming together in community, although it's not in a circle. Whereas just being in a sauna, that's just you sweating in a hot space. I mean, you can make ceremony out of anything, but it's just not the same. Not the same in any way.
And your Algonquin medicine man, indigenous healing, and the shamanism, what did that teach you?
Well, he doesn't do indigenous healing. Again, we have to separate the two. What I've learned from Pete Bernard is not indigenous healing in any way. He just happens to be indigenous. And that's where we have to really kind of separate and be careful and tread lightly on what we say and how we say it. Because again, we don't want to take away from, especially the indigenous people who are finally able to say, this is my practice, this is who I am, and I'm proud of it, and relearning essentially things that they never grew up with, right? So he's not teaching anything cultural. It's not indigenous healing. But what I've learned from his healing practices as an energy healer and a spiritual healer is essentially what it means to be human, and coming to the very essence of what it means to be whole, and the purpose of healing, right? If I ask you, what is the purpose of healing? Is there an end to healing, or does it go on forever?
Goes on forever. It's a journey.
But if it went on forever, wouldn't you eventually get to a point of hopelessness?
I don't know. I think that healing is a process. Otherwise, it would be healed. It would be done. I think that it's like achieving nirvana. I think that the Indian attempt to achieve nirvana is a process that one goes through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Maybe in the end you can actually achieve that, and maybe Buddha did or Siddhartha did, but it's a process, and the journey is part of the beauty of it all, that you are going through that journey.
Great. So then what's at the end of that process?
I don't know. I don't know. In Christianity, it's heaven and heaven on earth, I guess. In Buddhism, it's nirvana.
Okay. And if you were to put like a state or a state of being, like if we were to create that, if heaven was here in this world, in this state, in this consciousness that we live in, what would that look and feel like?
Gosh, I've got no idea. You tell me, you're the expert.
But these are the questions that we ask as healers, right? It's like, why can't we live that now? And if we can't live it now, if we can't start to create that quote unquote heaven on earth here in the now, then we're literally creating hell.
No, I don't think that's I think you're in the process of creating heaven. You're in the process of healing. You haven't healed yet. Do you think you are in the process of healing, or are you healed?
We're all in the process, but my point being is that
So you're not creating hell. You're improving yourself. You're growing. You're improving. You're healing yourself. But you're not healed. I don't know many people that are completely healed, if anybody, frankly.
Correct. Yet. So what I'm getting to is that there has to be an end. There has to be a healed outcome for any type, because otherwise we're just, and what I mean by we're creating hell is where hell is just continuing to repeat the same things over and over and over and over.
Yeah, no, if you're not trying to heal yourself, if you're not trying to improve yourself, if you're not trying to grow, I don't think you're in hell. But I think that it's disappointing, and it's not a great life lived. So I do think you have to strive to grow, to strive to improve, to strive to be a better person, to strive to your community, all those nice things that I think are part of being a human.
Absolutely. No,
but I don't think that by not achieving it, you've created hell. I think that you have strived as best you can, hopefully.
Okay. I'm just, maybe if we take if we take the words out of it, because when we put words to something, there's energy behind words, there's consciousness, there's feelings, things like that. So you just take those words out. What I'm getting at is this endless cycle of suffering versus the path to healing, whatever is at the end of it. There has to be a healed outcome. There has to be, what is the purpose? The purpose is to find peace, to be in harmony with oneself, to actually embody what it means to forgive, not just yourself, but others.
Well, and I think that's one of the big secrets to hopefully the success, or at least the desired outcome from the Truth and Reconciliation Day, is that one can understand what happened in the past and forgive, and get to a better place. And I think some people say, oh, well, we should just, we're not involved in that. It wasn't us. And so we should just, move on. Well, I don't think you can just move on. I think you have to, have an appreciation for what happened. And your friend talked about intergenerational trauma. I think there's been lots of studies that say intergenerational trauma is real. And you live in your genetic code some of the experiences of your forefathers and foremothers, and getting rid of that, or at least understanding it and then forgiving the past, I think is critically important to having a better future. And so I think that's what Truth and Reconciliation Day is, and that's why I think that for me, going to the Indigenous Experience Center in Fort Edmonton was powerful. And I interviewed the person who took me on the tour, who was a residential school survivor and someone whose parents were teachers. And so she had both the positive and the negative of, the negative and the negative of the residential school experience, both from the teaching side point as well as the student standpoint. And she talked about some of the achievements, and she talked about some of the culture, and she talked about the beauty of the culture and some of the attitudes that they have. For me, that was very impactful. My son, as I mentioned, had a far longer experience with many Indigenous peoples and sweat lodges and a lot of Indigenous spiritual aspects, and grew immensely through that experience. My sense is that you've done that, maybe not from a cultural standpoint, but from a healing practice standpoint. And you are, as I thought and expressed, a very unique individual because you've been exposed to that and learned from Indigenous people, whether it was cultural or experiential, and you put it into practice. And I think that's wonderful. And I think all of us need to do a little bit of that. These are critically important people in the history of Canada. There are brothers and sisters in our Canadian community. If we had Lincoln said the original sin of the United States was how Americans treated slaves. I think the original sin of Canada and Canadians, if there is one, is how we treated our Indigenous peoples. And I think that we need to go through a process that I think we're going through of not hiding the past, but really becoming aware of the past, both good and bad, and recognizing it, reconciling with it, understanding the truth of it, and then hopefully, ultimately, forgiving it and moving on. When some people, as I said, would just sort of dismiss the past and want to move on, and I don't think you can do that. I think you got to go through the process. Anyway, let's take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Beth Sturdevant and talk a little bit more about her experiences with our Indigenous communities and what she thinks we should be doing to, number one, play a role in Truth and Reconciliation Day, make it real for us. And then number two, some of the things that she's found that we could experience of Indigenous peoples, either culture or not culture, but some of their practices that might be beneficial in our lives. Because I think that she's, as I mentioned, experienced some of those and really adopted some of those and uses them. And I think that's wonderful. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. My guest tonight is Beth Sturdevant, who is a energy healer and a therapist, I guess, and someone who really tries to help people solve their issues and problems. And she uses lots of different techniques: shamanism, energy healing, spiritual healing, etc. You know what, Beth? Let's explore that. What actually do you do? If I came to you and said I got a bunch of problems, what would you do? Would you put me in a sweat lodge?
No. I mean, I would maybe direct you to somebody who could, because they are quite amazing. But no, I would sit down with you first, and we talk a little bit about what you're struggling with, what issues brought you to my healing table. And based on that, then I would have a better sense of exactly what practices I'm going to use in our session, whether it's exclusively energy healing. So I'm going to work on your energetic body, so your mental body, your spiritual body, physical body, emotional body. So I'm doing the work, quote unquote, for you. Or if I'm taking you on a shamanic journey, which is I'm guiding you, so to speak, in your imagination to a place where we're going to get you're going to get answers. So you're always in control. You're always an active participant in everything. And we're going for information. And then most importantly, we're going to heal. And then we're going to replace it with a healed outcome, so to speak. So we say that, healing isn't the absence of a wound, it's replacing it with something healed, right? So it's both. So it's complete. So that's in a nutshell, we kind of take it.
What's energy healing? Is that like Reiki or something?
Reiki is a form of energy healing. Yep. Or energy, we call it energy medicine. It is essentially using the various different energies around us, inside of us, in our minds, for the purpose of healing.
And what's a shamanic journey?
A shamanic journey is somebody is going on a trip, essentially, in your imagination, into your subconscious mind, or into your superconscious, which is where we create, where we dream, for the purpose of information and healing.
And how are you doing that? Are you just telling me to lie down, close my eyes, and start dreaming?
No, I will get you kind of into a trance state. So you're extremely relaxed. And I will go into my trance state. And then I will guide you with my words, help you to imagine. Everybody has an imagination, whether they know it or not. And guide you on a story, so to speak, on that journey based on what it is we're working, whether it's self-sabotage, which is everybody dances with their inner saboteur at some point in their life. So whether we're going to meet their inner saboteur to, well, essentially get rid of them. And
how would, if I thought I was self-sabotaging and you were going to help me get rid of my self-saboteur, how would you do that?
Just that. Getting you into trance, helping you to kind of relax, and then guiding you to the place where we go safely to meet them, to see them, to acknowledge them, to listen, to understand why they're sabotaging you in the first place, and then healing them and replacing it with something that you need, something that's going to support you in a healthy way moving forward.
So, of these practices that you use, which one of them come from what you've learned from the Algonquins or other Indigenous people that you have interacted with?
All of them. All of them. So when people ask, what do I know? It's like, I couldn't really encapsulate it into one sentence because it's it's like if you were to, well, if I were to go to a heart surgeon and I needed heart surgery, right? They have years and years of experience. They know so many practices and things that I wouldn't even really consciously comprehend. All I care about is that they're going to help me and save me, and that when I come out of the operating table or whatever, I'm better. So it's kind of the same. It's like I can't really tell you every single thing that I do and know because it's so extensive. It's 8 years of practicing and training different things in my practice, but it is encapsulated in energy medicine. So using various types of medicines, working with various different spirits, and putting it all together in this amazing soup, so to speak, where, whatever you're needing at the time, I then am able to kind of go into that recipe book and pull out what it is, what the medicine is that you need for the time.
Where do you do these therapeutic sessions? And if people are interested in checking you out, is there a website they can go to or book your time at, or how do people go about this?
Yeah, absolutely. People can find me on my website, bcrombie.com. Right now, I'm not seeing clients, as many clients as I used to, because I'm busy doing some other things and working on some other projects. So I see clients once a week on Thursdays at a clinic on the east end of Ottawa. Mhm.
BethSturdevant.com. And what are the other things? I understand that you were in St. Catharines and other places recently with a band doing James Bond music. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's the so I play the cello too. And that I do that stuff to feed my soul, so to speak. And it's so fun and I love doing it, and it's such a joy. So that's one thing. I'm doing a couple of other projects I can't really talk about right now, and just I'm a modern day Renaissance woman, we'll say. It's a true
Oh,
artist.
I want to come and experience the yurt sometime. That's what I want to do, and or the hike. But I understand it's only females that can go on your hike in the Appalachians.
That is, last year we opened it up to men and females, and we had one man join us, and it was fine. But it seems to be mostly women that want to come, and it's beautiful.
A couple of friends of mine are doing this trek through northern Spain, the Casa Santa Diego, and it's a hike, a spiritual hike. I think I'd like to do that. That sounds like it would be very impactful to me. And the physical exercise, the spiritual exercise, the time alone, more with community, with the people you meet, and just getting away from social media and society and experiencing, I think would be fantastic. Beth, really appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
We're going to take a break and come back, and I'm going to give you a couple of my thoughts on this original sin that I think Canada experienced isn't the right word, that we had, and what I think we need to do, and a couple of thoughts on how we can go through this reconciliation that Truth and Reconciliation Day is all about. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes with a couple of concluding comments from myself.